A mistake is only a mistake if you lose. That is the operating theology of Marty Supreme, not a moral framework, not a philosophy you'd find in a self-help book or a commendment speech. Something rawer than that, something more honest. The kind of logic that lives in the body before it ever reaches the brain. The logic of a man who has spent his entire life in motion, who has never once stopped long enough to reckon with the wreckage he leaves behind, and who has, against all reasonable expectation, found a way to turn that wreckage into foundation. Marty Supreme is not interested in redemption. It is interested in something quieter than that, and something more dangerous. The man who doesn't redeem his failures so much as outrun them, who arrives somewhere new and breathless and looks back at the wreckage and finds, in the distance, something that looks like it was always meant to be. Marty Supreme is a film about that distance. The film opens with sex the way a ledger opens with a debt, performed under a guise of transaction, casually, without courting, a condition of the world rather than an event within it. Marty does not make love, he moves through the world in a series of exchanges. Money for passage, charm for forgiveness, performance for approval. And the pregnancy that ignites this entire story is no different. It is, at first, simply another Marty transaction. Something given, something taken, something not fully accounted for. A bill left on the table. A check written against an account that does not exist. This is the first mistake. Not the pregnancy itself, the not accounting for it, the not sitting with it, the moving on before the ink is dry. Marty is a creature of the present tense. He does not plan. He does not strategize in the way that men with patience and foresight strategize. He reacts. He responds to the spin the world puts on things. And the world, for now, has not yet put enough spin on this particular thing to demand a response. So he moves. He keeps moving. He does what Marty does. And the mistake sits quietly in the background. Accountability is not a decision. It is a capacity. And capacity is not given. It is built painfully, unglamorously, through the accumulation of failures, humiliations, tests failed, and circuses endured. Marty does not lack the desire to be good. He lacks the architecture for it. Watch how he moves through the world. Watch the lies. Not malicious lies, not the lies of a villain, but the lies of a man who has learned that momentum is survival. He will say anything to get to the next place. He will promise anything to keep the ball in play. He is not cruel. He is incomplete. There is a difference, and the film insists on it with a patience that borders on tenderness. The people around Marty are almost inexplicably gentle with him. The world cushions him, forgives him, funds him, waits for him, and the gentleness at times feels like it belongs to a different film entirely. A softer film, a quieter film, a film without this much velocity. The dissonance is not an accident. It is a perspective fracture. Marty's perspective. The world is not nearly as catastrophic as he experiences it. He amplifies it because to him everything is amplified. He is a man living inside his own anxiety, and the anxiety has a name he hasn't said out loud yet. Then Japan calls. And right at that moment, the pressure of his life is at its most acute. Right when the tension is cresting. Right when he has the least room to absorb anything new. Rachel tells him she's pregnant. And Marty asks, "You got this, right?" The timing is not accidental, because in that moment two mistakes collide. The first, losing to Endo at the British opening, a public failure. A crack in the mythology Marty has been constructing about himself since before we met him. Endo returns to Japan, his country receives him, a hero, and Marty is left with the specific, corrosive humiliation of a man who believed in himself and was proven wrong in front of everyone. The second, Rachel, the pregnancy, the life he has carelessly, impulsively, transactionally set into motion. The film fuses these two events in Marty's psyche until they become, in his internal architecture, the same mistake. Before Marty can become a father, he has to reckon with the version of himself that never grew up. She's wealthy, she's critical, she's magnetic. She has been exactly where Marty is. She has told him so herself, and that is precisely why he is drawn to Kay Stone. Not just for the money, not just for the sex, though those are real and the film does not pretend otherwise. He is drawn to her because she is him, a more polished, more financially stable, more self-aware version of the same fundamental creature, someone who moves through the world on charm and instinct and refuses to be accountable to anything that doesn't serve them. There is something deeply egocentric in Marty's attraction to Kay Stone. He has always seen himself in her. She is the mirror he keeps returning to, not because she shows him who he could be, but because she shows him who he already is, dressed up in money and authority, and the comfortable mythology of someone who got away with it. To stay in her orbit is to stay a child. To rely on the vision of her money is to refuse the discomfort of earning your own. To see yourself in her is to love yourself at the expense of everyone else. She is the womb of his arrested development, but she is also quietly his mother. She funds him and criticizes him and forgives him in the same breath. She has seen this version of him before because she was this version once. And the intimacy is not purely desire. It is the oldest and most confused form of closeness. The need to collapse the distance between yourself and the person who makes you feel both seen and safe. Marty doesn't just want Keystone. He wants to be held by her. He wants the warmth of someone who already knows the worst of him and hasn't left. The tragedy is that she cannot give him what he actually needs, because what he actually needs is to stop needing her entirely. The dog is the test Marty failed before the test that matters. It is the universe's first draft of the question it will eventually ask him in full. Can you be responsible for something that depends entirely on you? He cannot. He fails the dog. He moves on. He does what Marty does. He keeps the ball in play. He responds to the next thing. He does not sit with the weight of what he's left behind. But the film remembers. The dog is a metaphysical timestamp, a marker that says your actions are accumulating. The ledger is being kept. You cannot outrun the arithmetic of your own behavior forever. It is the universe telling Marty quietly, without announcement, in the grammar of a minor scene that doesn't announce its own importance, that the timeline is closing, that what you do and do not do is being recorded, that there is a reckoning coming, and it will arrive on its own schedule, not yours. The dog is not proof of Marty's cruelty. It is proof of his incompleteness. He is not yet capable of the sustained, unglamorous, unrewarded labor of caring for something that cannot care for itself. There is a particular kind of humiliation that only arrives when you have publicly betrayed your own stated values. Marty Mauser becomes a circus act for the Harlem Globetrotters. He has said explicitly, on record, in front of people who will remember, that this would be beneath him, that this would be humiliating, that he would never. And then he does. The film frames this as more embarrassing than any of his tantrums, more exposing than any of his failures on the table. And that is a precise and deliberate choice, because a tantrum, in the grammar of this film, is a growing pain. It is the sound of a man in the process of becoming something, the noise of the shell cracking. The audience can see it for what it is, even when Marty cannot. His outbursts are ugly and inconvenient, and they are the behavior of a child with the power of a man. But they are honest. They are Marty's interior life leaking out. They are the pregnancy of his emotional immaturity, demanding to be born. The circus act is the opposite. It is self-betrayal for money. It is the commodification of dignity. It is Marty looking at his own stated values and decided that they are, in fact, not non-negotiable. This is rock bottom. Not because Marty has done something terrible, but because he has done something small. He has made himself small, and the film watches it with the same unflinching patience it watches everything else. The patience of something that already knows how the story ends, waiting for Marty to catch up. The humiliation is not punishment, it is internalization. Every loss, every compromise, every public diminishment is Marty's body absorbing the weight of what he has done and what he has not yet done. He is not being broken down, he is being built up, painfully, expensively, in the only way available to a man like him. To understand Marty Supreme, you have to understand what table tennis actually is. It is not a flexible sport. There is no negotiation in it, no improvisation, no time to reconsider. The ball is struck and it is coming back, and you have a fraction of a second to respond. And then it is coming back again and again and again until someone fails to respond and the point is over. The ball is never still. This is Marty's life, not as a metaphor but as Newtonian physics. He does not plan, he reacts. He responds to the spin the world puts on things. He is at his core a creature of the present tense. Brilliant in the moment, catastrophic in the long term. And the sport is the perfect arena for him because it demands exactly what he is. Fast, reactive, instinctive, incapable of patience. But here is what the sport reveals about him that nothing else can. He is extraordinary at response. When the ball is in play, when the crisis is immediate, and the stakes are physical and the solution is kinetic, Marty is alive in a way that most people never are. The tragedy is that life is not a table tennis match. Life requires you to hold the ball sometimes, to sit with it, to not strike back immediately, to let the consequence breathe. And so the ball keeps moving, the pregnancy keeps growing, Japan keeps calling, and Marty keeps responding to everything except the thing that matters most. There is also something almost biological about the image of the ball itself. Small, white, moving with precision, seeking a target. Every serve is a kind of insemination. Every rally is a kind of competition between forces trying to outlast each other. The sport becomes a theater of reproduction, of the primal, ruthless, beautiful competition of creation. All those sperms are racing with one winner. Only one becomes the father. Marty has already won that race. He just can't recognize the victory. There is one section in Marty Supreme that does not include Marty. Rachel alone tries to pull a fast one on Ezra, the man who owns the dog, Moses. It of course backfires immediately. The stakes become life and death, and the scene is the film's most important formal decision. Up until this point, the film has been Marty's subjective experience, his intensity, his distortions, his internal mythology, his anxiety amplifying, his ego distorting. The film has been, in a very real sense, his headcanon, and then the camera leaves him. And suddenly, the pregnancy is not a metaphor. Suddenly, Rachel is not a symbol. Suddenly, the consequence Marty has set in motion is a living, breathing, endangered thing existing in the world without him. Ezra is not part of Marty's journey. He does not care. He does not care about table tennis or Japan or the mythology of the returning hero. Ezra is simply a man with power and has been wronged, and Rachel is simply a woman in danger, and the child inside her is simply a life that could end. This is the moment the headcanon is pierced by reality. The film is telling us, quietly, without announcement, that while Marty has been circling the block, fate has been moving without him. The clock is not waiting. The consequence is not waiting. The universe has been proceeding on its own schedule, and Marty's internal drama, however vivid and however real to him, is not the only thing happening. Rachel exists in this film the way fate exists in Greek tragedy. She is not a character so much as a condition, a fixed point in the universe around which Marty's chaos orbits. She does not demand, she does not chase, she simply is. And the fact of her existence, the fact of what Marty has set in motion inside her body, has been the gravitational center of everything all along. He just couldn't feel the pull until now. The timeline is closing. Endo is not a villain. Endo is not the obstacle between Marty and happiness. Endo is the proof. When Marty lost to Endo at the British opening, it was a mistake, an act of unreadiness, a public declaration that Marty Mauser, for all his self-proclaimed reputation and all his mythology, was not yet what he believed himself to be. Endo returns to Japan, a hero. Marty was not ready, and the film does not let him forget that. But here's the thing about readiness. It is not a fixed state. It is not something you either have or don't have. It is something you build, painfully, unglamorously, through the accumulation of failures and humiliations and dog tests and circus acts and tantrums and transactions gone unexamined. When the film tells us that Marty, of Jewish descent, is dropping a third atom bomb on Endo of Japan, the line lands with the weight of history. It is not a social commentary, it is not a political statement. It is the internal costume of a man who needs the scale of myth to justify the scale of his transformation. He is not just defeating a table tennis opponent, he is correcting a historical wrong. He is redeeming a mistake so completely that it ceases to be a mistake and becomes retroactively the origin of something great. This is how Marty's mind works. This is the only language he speaks. Everything is epic, everything is war. Everything is the kind of story that gets told afterward, when the dust has settled and the planes are coming home. The match at the promotional event is not on Endo's terms. It is on Marty's terms, for Marty's reasons. And when he wins, when he finally definitively wins, it is not a victory of athleticism. It is a metaphysical correction. It is a Marty standing over the wreckage of his own recklessness and saying, this is what grew from it. The mistakes become the origin story. The transaction becomes destiny. Marty returns home on US military aircrafts, not a commercial flight, not a quiet return, planes that move mountains, the iconography of soldiers coming home from war, the visual language of men who left as boys and returned as something else, something tested, something forged, something that has earned the right to be received. It would be easy to read this as irony, as the film gently mocking the protagonist's grandiosity, as the film winking at the audience. Look at this man, this table tennis player, this circus act, this boy. Look how seriously he takes himself. But the film means it, because Marty means it. He is so fundamentally, constitutionally immature. that the only path to fatherhood available to him runs through myth. He cannot simply decide to grow up. He cannot sit down one afternoon and choose accountability the way you choose a restaurant. He requires a meteoric shift in self-image. He requires the theatrical, the dramatic, the grandiose. He requires the story of himself as a conquering hero, because without that story, there is no version of him that can walk through the door and be a father. The planes are not delusion, the planes are the price of admission. This is what the film understands about a certain kind of man, a man like Marty, that most films do not have the patience or the generosity to understand, that the path of responsibility is not always linear, it is not always humble. Sometimes it is loud and excessive and embarrassing, and it involves military aircrafts and a rivalry between a Japanese table tennis champion and a woman who is your mother and your lover, and a dog you failed, and a pregnancy you didn't plan. Sometimes the only way home is the long way. Endo returned from the British Open and he returned a hero too. His country received him, his planes were real, his victory was clean. Marty's return is louder, more excessive, more than Endo's, because Marty needs it to be. Because Marty is not just returning from Japan. He is returning from himself. He is returning from the version of him that lost, that failed Moses, that made himself small for the Globetrotters, that couldn't hold the ball still long enough to feel the weight of what he'd created. The film ends where it begins, except Marty is here to see Rachel this time. But it is not the same fact. It has passed through stages, transactions, tension, terror, ordeal, and arrived at something that can only be called readiness. Not perfection, not transformation, not the clean, cinematic version of a man who has learned his lesson and will never again be reckless or impulsive or self-obsessed. Readiness. Marty, by the end of this film, has discovered three things. He has discovered how to deal with his actions. Not to undo them, not to outrun them, but to redeem them. To stand in the wreckage and build something from it. A mistake today is not necessarily a mistake tomorrow. He has discovered those who love him when he could not love himself. The people who were gentle with him when he deserved harshness. The people who cushioned him and reflected him and waited for him. He has been surrounded by love the entire time. He was simply too loud, too reactive, and too much in the middle of his own rally to notice. And he has discovered, perhaps most importantly, and perhaps most quietly, that he was racing toward this all along. The pregnancy was never the crisis, it was the destination disguised as a crisis. The child was never the thing that interrupted his life. The child was the thing his life was building toward. Through every transaction and every humiliation and every match and every mistake, he was subconsciously racing toward fatherhood the entire time, treating it like destiny, treating it like the inevitable end of a story that was always going to end here. He was always going to be a father. He just needed to become someone worthy of the title. The ball, finally, is still. Marty Supreme is not a film about a man who grows up despite himself. It is a film about a man who grows up as himself through the specific, irreducible, sometimes magnificent, often embarrassing texture of who he actually is. It does not ask Marty to become someone else. It asks Marty to become more fully himself. To take the same instincts that made him reckless and aim them at something that matters. We do not redeem our mistakes by erasing them. We redeem them by becoming someone for whom those mistakes were necessary, by looking back at the wreckage and finding, in the rubble, the exact materials that built the person standing here now. Marty Mauser won. Not because he deserved to, not because he was good, but because he was ready. And readiness is enough. It has to be.